everyone, Jess here, and today I'm joined with Colin, Senior Manager of Strategic Intelligence at Lufthansa Innovation Hub. Thank you so much for joining me today, Colin.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me here today.
Of course, so we're about to have a really interesting conversation touching on sort of quantum technology, harnessing digital information and innovation. But before we get into that, could we start with learning a little bit about your role at Lufthansa Innovation Hub, Colin?
Yeah, of course. So at the Lufthansa Innovation Hub, I'm working in the strategic intelligence team, and we are more or less focusing on all of the different trends that impact the aviation industry in the future. And we are looking at, for example, how can we innovate or what innovations will impact the passenger journey, for example. But we also look into areas which are more deep tech and hardware driven, such as electric aviation, but also about the topics that we're talking about today, which is the quantum computing issue.
Amazing. So in your role, you're really well positioned to see the ever evolving landscape and sort of understand what's new, what's disruptive, and what has sort of longer term potential for the industry as well.
Mhm.
So in the event next month now, you're going to be speaking on leveraging quantum technology and harnessing digital innovation. So I suppose the big question is quantum computing really the next big leap for aviation, or would you say it's a bit overhyped?
Yeah, so I do believe that quantum computing has the potential to be quite the game changer for the aviation industry. But we also need to be clear that right now, if we are looking at from a today's point of view, or if we are even fast forwarding into the next 5 or even 10 years, it is still in an early, let's say, more exploration phase, especially for the aviation industry. So that doesn't mean that that like we at Lufthansa Innovation Hub are not looking at it. Actually, obviously we love innovation and everything that's new. So we for sure look also at quantum computing and what is the potential that it can bring to the aviation industry. But we also need to be a little bit realistic that quantum will not solve, for example, airline operations next year or in the next 5 years, because actually the biggest challenge is actually not quantum itself, but actually whether airlines have the digital infrastructure in place to make use of it and to leverage it. And if you look at airlines right now, some of them even struggle with like basic AI adoption or even with simple automation of processes. So many actually still use paperwork, manual work to complete processes, and then obviously it'll be quite yeah, difficult to jump from paperwork to the quantum solutions. So we really need to at the moment focus, okay, let's fix our processes, move from manual to automation. Let's integrate AI into our processes, and become like a digital first organization in order to be ready once quantum tech is available.
Absolutely. And like you say, people sort of the actors are in very different stages of this journey. So it's not necessarily moving forward in a uniformed regimen, so to speak. You did mention that this isn't going to take off next year or even in the next 5 years. Do you have some sense of timeline when you do think is realistic for this to be sort of in really seeing the benefits of this at large scale?
Yeah, so if we are, for example, talking about commercial deployment in like aviation operations or in any other area of the aviation industry, then I would say we're looking at 10 plus years. So most likely somewhere between 2030 and the 2040s. Because currently we have to keep in mind that like the companies that are working on the technology, they are focusing, for example, on error correction and some other challenges that the current technology has, which needs to be resolved first in order for airlines to actually make use of it on a daily basis. And therefore, I can see, okay, it will take a little bit more time until the technology also matures, until the challenges are being solved. And then we can actually most likely see pilot projects, for example, to optimize different processes. One example could be how to navigate aircrafts efficiently across the ocean, for example. So that would be all under the topic around flight route optimization, for example. Um, but like to really make use of the entire technology that will most likely take even longer, probably even beyond 2040s.
Okay, that's
So,
really interesting.
mm,
Sorry.
and if I come back to our first question or the first topic that we talked about, it's for us actually not a question when will quantum be ready. It's in the end again more like when are airlines ready to integrate it. And that's why we are pushing so hard also at the Lufthansa Innovation Hub. Hey, airlines, you need to start or you need to further improve your digitalization capabilities because it becomes more and more important, especially when we talk about this topic here.
That makes perfect sense. And you sort of touched on flight routes already. What are some of the other realistic near-term applications of quantum computing in aviation?
Yeah, so when you talk to people about okay, what are use cases in aviation with by using quantum technologies, and sometimes you get like a long list of all different kinds of use cases. And you get the impression, okay, more or less everything can be applied to it. But then when you look at it in a more detail or into depth into it, then you really come to the conclusion, okay, the early use cases will most likely be not maybe even specific to aviation, but more aerospace, which is like, okay, it can be used for material science, for example, that can help design lighter and stronger aircraft materials, which would be like a great benefit, for example, for Airbus or Boeing in order to develop the next gen aircraft for the aviation industry. Another realistic applications or application within the next medium term horizon would be, for example, everything around secure communications and cybersecurity in order to enhance encryption of these communication systems of an aircraft, for example. Um, these are these I see as realistic use cases, which most likely will also take off first before like other use cases that we are talking specifically in aviation, which I will also actually highlight during my presentation at the conference.
Fantastic. And of course, all of this innovation doesn't come cheap. So we've already seen billions flow into quantum computing, but how much of this investment is actually dedicated towards aviation specifically?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we looked at because at the Lufthansa Innovation Hub we always look at um, data points, and one of our key data points is follow the money. So it's like, okay, where is actually venture capital funding going into? Who's investing? Who's getting it? Which corporates are increasing their R&D spend into which areas? And we obviously also looked into this topic for quantum computing. And then saw, okay, there is a lot of money going into it, and it in venture capital funding, but also corporate spend into R&D significantly increased in the past 5 to 10 years. And for example, the corporates alone in their R&D budgets spent roughly 2.4 billion last year, dedicated only to quantum computing. But this is most linked to companies like IBM, Google, Microsoft, who are not really aviation focused, but they're more focusing on, okay, how can we develop the hardware? How can we mitigate the current challenges that we are currently having with the technology to make it available to the mass market, so to speak. So they're not focusing on specific aviation use cases. Um, but there are obviously also players from the aviation industry and aerospace segments, such as Airbus, Boeing, Honeywell as a supplier to the aerospace industry, and also Lockheed Martin. looking into this, and they have also dedicated budget to this technology. Um, Sometimes it's a bit difficult to really figure out, okay, how much did they actually spend internally, because the numbers are not always published. But for example, if you look at Boeing, Boeing invested 120 million in its Q4S satellite project, which is a quantum project. And they also dedicated now $75 million annually for this quantum development projects, for example. And then if you look at Airbus, Airbus worked and is working together with BMW, the automotive company. They launched a so-called Quantum Quest initiative, where startups and interesting projects can apply for it, and then get funding from these two players. And their main focus area was, okay, how can we kind of rethink mobility in this space using quantum technology? And then if you look at more like really like the airlines, like the aviation players, then I can look at Lufthansa itself. We at Lufthansa, like Lufthansa Group, we also have a project ongoing with the DLR. That's like the German Aerospace Institute. And we look at very specific use cases such as flight route optimization, for example.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot of different players contributing financially at sort of different rates, and I'm sure they'll be progressing at different speeds as well. But it's very interesting that this is being developed outside of aerospace and aviation as well, and then we can sort of the industry can incorporate and grow, sort of catalyzed by that existing bulk of
Yeah,
information.
definitely. It is so, and that's maybe one thing to add. When you talk to different people within the aviation industry, then you always get the question, okay, but how can we make use of it? What are the high potential use cases? And that's kind of the question that needs to have an answer. And that's also, for example, why within Lufthansa we look at different use cases that we see or that we deem as high potential use cases, either in terms of, okay, we can save costs with it, we can increase revenue, we can optimize our ops, for example, and then we need to kind of also wait about the outcome because our studies internally are ongoing at the moment, and then see what is the most yeah, potential use case. For example, as I mentioned before, we have like this flight route optimization project, but there's also another project which is done with the Hamburg Airport, where we look at, okay, how can it be used to allocate aircrafts to the gates of the airport, for example. So this apparently this seems to be like a big challenge that airports need to allocate for the incoming aircraft a gate. And obviously, when an aircraft is delayed or whatever, then this entire system is not working perfectly how it should be. And I mean, you probably can imagine that not a lot of flights are exactly on time. So because of several reasons, and that's why this project is also seems to be also quite interesting in terms of potentials that we can generate there.
Absolutely. And even in our brief discussion today, we've touched on a range of different topics. So sort of a wealth of different use cases, the money, the landscape more broadly. What's one key to message that you would want aviation leaders to take away from this conversation?
The one key message would be actually don't wait for quantum, but actually fix your digital foundation first. It's exactly what we started with actually, because many companies and in the aviation world kind of struggling to integrate like the basic AI and automation technology into their processes. And then obviously the question is, are we able and ready to implement such a high and top-notch technology if we are not being able to integrate and get the basics done? And if you, for example, as I said before, if you look at the reality today and during my presentation at the event, I will actually pick one very concrete use case, which is crew scheduling. And you might assume, okay, crew scheduling, that's an easy task which you can automate, but in reality, many of the scheduling for crews is actually done manually via using um, 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 papers and maybe even Excel spreadsheets. And if someone's getting sick, then you need to move around. So it's very manual. So we are not there at an automation level, and that's what we need to fix first. And then we can talk about quantum.
Okay, so fix the digital foundations first to give yourself that springboard for innovation.
Exactly.
And then, of course, you'll be giving a presentation at the event. But why did Lufthansa Innovation Hub decide to join Aerospace Tech Week as an innovation partner this year?
Because we are, first of all, we attended last year the event as well in Munich, and we found it extremely interesting from the topic point of view that were being discussed, but also by the networking opportunity that we had by meeting a very diverse group of people. And that's also why we're joining this year. And obviously, we also want to deliver our point of view, our content on, let's say, interesting topics that are quite in the future, but where you already need to at least look at today in order to be ready once it takes off. Because usually what happens when it's not, let's say, critical today, then you just say, okay, it's too far in the distance, we can just wait. But as soon as the technology takes off, then usually you are running behind and you're playing catch up, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And it's like that's also the message that we're trying to deliver. You need to look at these innovations, either it be quantum computing, it can also be other innovations, obviously. And you shouldn't forget what's happening outside of your own four walls in order not to lose out.
Absolutely. Well, I'm greatly looking forward towards your session at the event, and thank you for sharing all these really interesting insights on quantum technology.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely looking forward to the week. I'll be there for the entire days, so looking forward to all the different sessions and also meeting obviously many aerospace and aviation passionates who are also really into the aviation topic.